In this video, the demonstration of the DC project using the virtual lab for Binary Amplitude Shift Keying, also known as BASK, is demonstrated clearly virtually. This experiment helps us understand the generation and analysis of ASK modulation used in digital communication systems. Binary Amplitude Shift Keying, commonly known as BASK, is a digital modulation technique which is also called as on-off keying method. The reason behind this is when the binary input is 1, the carrier signal is transmitted, and when the binary input is 0, the carrier signal is not transmitted. Because of this behavior, BASK is always called as on-off keying. In this modulation technique, the amplitude of the carrier changes depending on the digital message signal, while the frequency and phase remains constant. ASK is widely used in digital communication system because of its simple implementation and easy demodulation process. As you see, to perform this experiment, the following procedure is to be followed. First, the required parameters such as amplitude, carrier, frequency, and input binary sequence are entered into the simulation. Next, the simulation is executed to generate the carrier signal and the ASK modulated signal. Then, the output waveforms are observed to understand how the binary data controls the amplitude of the carrier signal. Finally, the demodulated output is analyzed to verify whether the original input signal is correctly recovered or not. Before running this simulation, the following instructions are to be followed. First, the amplitude must be assigned a positive value. Second, the carrier frequency should be less than 10 kHz. Third, the carrier frequency should be much higher than the message frequency, typically around 10 times greater. The maximum number of bits allowed is 50 and the input sequence must contain only binary values, that is zeros and ones. For higher order ASK such as M-ary ASK, the input bits must follow the required grouping formats. The pretest is provided to assess the basic understanding of the experiment before performing the simulation. The pretest consists of multiple choice questions related to amplitude shift keying and digital communication concepts. These questions help students evaluate their prior knowledge about ASK modulation, carrier signals, and binary data transmission. By completing the pretest, students can better understand the concept required to perform the ASK modulation experiment in the virtual lab. In the simulation section, the parameters are entered according to the experiment requirements. After entering the values, the simulation is executed. The system then displays different waveforms including the input binary signal, carrier signal, ASK modulated signal, and demodulated output signal. By observing these waveforms, we can clearly understand how the carrier amplitude changes according to the input data. One such example is done here. We can clearly see that the entered binary input signal and the demodulated signal is exactly the match of each other, and we can ensure that the data is recovered properly. In the simulation 2, the ASK signal is further analyzed and the demodulation process is demonstrated. Here, the number of bits is entered as 12 and the corresponding binary sequence is used for the simulation. After running the simulation, the system displays the ASK modulated waveform and also the recovered signal. In this, we study the M-ary Amplitude Shift Keying, specifically 4 ASK and 8 ASK modulation. In this method, instead of transmitting one bit at a time, multiple bits are grouped together and represented using different amplitude levels. First, 4 ASK modulation is generated. In 4 ASK, two bits are grouped together to form one symbol. Since there are 2 bits per symbol, the signal can have 4 different amplitude levels, representing the 4 possible combinations 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0 and 1, 1. As you see, the waveform displayed shows the 4 ASK modulated signal, where the amplitude of the carrier changes according to the grouped binary data. Next, the simulation demonstrate 8 ASK modulation. In 8 ASK, 3 bits are grouped together to form one symbol. This results in 8 different amplitude levels, each representing a unique 3-bit combination. The displayed output shows how the carrier amplitude varies across 8 different levels, depending on the input data sequence. This simulation illustrates how higher order ASK modulation increases data transmission efficiency by grouping 2 bits or 3 bits by representing with a unique symbol. This improves the efficiency by sending multiple bits per symbol. The post-test is provided to evaluate the understanding of the experiment. The post-test consists of multiple choice questions related to binary amplitude shift keying modulation. These questions help in assessing the knowledge gained from the theory, procedure, and simulation performed in the virtual lab. By answering these questions, students can verify their understanding of concepts such as ASK signal generation, carrier signal generation, and the modulation process. From this experiment, we successfully studied the binary amplitude shift keying modulation technique. We observed how the carrier signal amplitude changes depending on the binary input signal. The simulation also demonstrated how the original signal can be recovered after demodulation. Thus, the ASK modulation experiment was successfully performed using this virtual lab.